Which bird is the fastest flyer? Which creature the best jumper? Which mammal the swiftest on four legs? How do the animals compare with the human Olympians? Well, for a start, they're differently equipped. The millipede has 400 legs, not incidentally 1,000. The centipede has 40, not 100. It, too, is in a class of its own. All spiders have 8 legs. Some, like this tarantula, plod along. Other spiders are faster. The ghost crab also has 8 legs and twinkles sideways across the sand like a ballet dancer on points. Insects beetle along on 6 legs. Most mammals have 4 and use 4. But some mammals have 4 and use only 2. All birds have 2 legs. The other 2 limbs have become wings for flying or flippers for swimming. But only penguins abandon using all 4 limbs to toboggan on their bellies. Lizards may also get up on their hind feet, the faster to run. The Arctic hare adopts this upright posture, the better to keep an eye on potential enemies. At the other extreme, the seal uses its front feet, having turned its rear 2 into a kind of tail. And the front feet may be moved alternately or together, but either way, it's style rather than speed. Snakes, which used to have 4 limbs, now have none. A far cry from 400 legs, but still the sidewinder could overtake the millipede. In the race to get ahead, each overlander, non-human or human, has its own way of moving, adapted by evolution to its own way of life. Sports doctors study athletes in training. Zoologists probe the mysteries of animal locomotion. Human walkers, carefully chosen, then highly trained, heel and toe along at nearly 9 miles an hour. Scientists have compared walking to the rolling of a hard-boiled egg, because when the egg falls forward, it's using gravity, and when it rises, it's using momentum. And that's what the walking ostrich is doing. It's gracefully transforming with each stride the energy stored in forward motion. Running is not such a smooth progression. A runner bounces along, storing energy in the elastic elements of muscles and tendons, and recovering that energy to help each foot off the ground in succession. The comparison is with a ball that deforms and reshapes itself each time it lands and takes off. This is the world's largest animal on 2 feet at 45 miles an hour now, bouncing along on powerful legs. It is easier to see the action in slow motion. The Achilles tendon in which the energy is stored runs the length of the leg because the ostrich has its leg muscles as near as possible to its body. And this means that the legs themselves are lighter and so require less effort to swing forward with each step. And the legs are free of feathers so as to be air-cooled. Bouncing on 2 legs together, the kangaroo is a high-speed hopper that can cruise at 25 miles an hour. A beautiful action with the tail acting as counterbalance and rudder. Once a kangaroo tops 15 miles an hour, it is saving on energy compared with a 4-footed runner. But hopping at low speeds has serious shortcomings, and that's partly why few large animals, besides kangaroos, have chosen to employ the principle of the pogo stick. The pronghorn antelope, a more conventional animal Olympian with 4 feet. It's the long-distance runner of open sagebrush country in western North America. These are doing exactly 44 miles an hour. Their breathing is in phase with their movements. The muscles of their long, slender legs are stretched to release energy as they stride, and then shortened to absorb it as their feet hit the ground and push off again. The speed and endurance of these excellent runners has adapted them well for traveling far and fast. Why should the pronghorn antelope have evolved such speed? It can only be to escape enemies. Speed is a weapon which prey animals have relied on for ages in the race for survival. Gold medalist among the overland hunters, the supreme sprinter of the wild world is that lithe cat of the African savanna, the cheetah. So remarkable is the cheetah, we'll be looking at its performance in depth, its physique, its anatomy, its tactics. The contest starts here. Like much of our film, the pursuit is in slow motion, the better to see and appreciate the action. To maximize its speed, the cheetah has a pack of evolutionary tricks. One trick to help lengthen each stride is to arch the spine to tuck the rear end of it under the body, so as to get the rear feet as far forward as possible before bringing them down. Then, to give the front feet maximum reach before planting them, the cheetah bows its spine the other way. So the animal first arches and then stretches its body, almost like certain caterpillars do. The cheetah has been carefully timed up to 62 miles an hour, and there is one respectable claim for a 71-mile-an-hour cheetah. At this speed, the animal could give to 100-meter human sprinters a 65-meter start and still beat them. They do only 23 miles an hour. The 100 meters takes 9 seconds, and the competitors don't really breathe as they run. Not so the 400-meter men, whose race takes 44 seconds. They do breathe. The point is that it takes about 20 seconds before inhaled oxygen can do your performance any good. So, different distances demand different strategies. Nobody knows whether our cheetah holds its breath or not, but it is undoubtedly a sprinter. So it needs to stalk its prey first to get within range. A Thompson's gazelle. First gear, walking. Second gear, trotting. The big cats don't canter, so it's straight into fourth gear, the gallop. Incredible acceleration, and even this shot is in slightly slow motion. The cheetah's aim is a swift catch. The gazelle's main hope is to avoid early capture. With bounds of up to 23 feet, 3.5 times every second, this cheetah is doing roughly 50 miles an hour. Why, then, isn't it succeeding? Because the lighter gazelle can more easily dodge back and forth. The cheetah gives up. Perhaps its technique is to run without breathing, and it was taken by the gazelle up to its breath time limit. The action replay starts when the cheetah is already trotting. We have to remember that while the cheetah is after just one dinner, the gazelle is running and dodging for its only life. In a straight race, the gazelle would probably be caught. But the gazelle is like a pentathlon entrant who may not be tops at running, but more than makes up with exceptional skill at turning and dodging away. Why exactly will the cheetah give up? Perhaps it's just not hungry enough, or perhaps it doesn't breathe during the run and would get cramp if it carried on. Perhaps it's just plain muscle fatigue. Competition in the natural world means a number of things. Hunter versus hunted, as we've just seen, but also hunter competing with hunter, which means that less fit cheetahs lose out and maybe even die of starvation. Competition also means that prey animals compete with one another to escape. The less fit antelopes lose out, and the strong survive. Nature is red in tooth and claw. It's natural selection, Darwin's discovery. Besides running and dodging, prey animals have other tricks. Fleeing springboks display white rumps. It used to be thought that the first animal to spot the enemy warned its fellows with this white signal. A more recent theory says that a confusion of white bottoms makes it more difficult for the pursuer to pick out one from the crowd. Even more interesting, why do they jump over nothing? Could it be that the leapers are saying, "See how high I can jump? I'm one of the fitter ones. You stand a better chance if you pursue someone else." It would be another example of competition for survival. To find out why some competitors are faster than others, it is useful to know exactly how they move. Different gaits or stepping patterns in human and non-human animals bring about increasing speed. A walking animal can't simply move its legs faster to gain speed. It has to alter the sequence of its footfalls. Walking means that each leg swings forward at its own time. But the beagle is changing now into second gear, the trot. Each diagonal pair of legs now moves together. Two red-taped legs down together, two green down together, and you hear in effect only two footfalls. Gradually, the speed of the treadmill is increased and the dog willingly responds. We're still trotting, but wait for the change to the canter. The far rear leg will miss a beat, there, and now meets its diagonally opposite number. Unlike cats, but like horses, dogs do canter. Meantime, the other two legs carry on exactly the same as in the trot. Now we hear three footfalls, two singles and a double. The next change to fourth gear, to the gallop, is more subtle. Almost imperceptibly, as the dog accelerates still more, the two red-taped feet that were falling together begin to come down separately. By bringing each foot down individually, each leg's muscles can make their own contribution to the animal's. That's how it goes its fastest. A galloping horse works on exactly the same principle. A 1.5-mile race is won at 35 miles an hour. Over a quarter of a mile, the fastest racehorse ever did 43 miles an hour. The wild ancestor of both the horse and the ass is believed to be Przewalski's horse of central Mongolia. Members of the horse family are the most effective running machines ever evolved. So the horse and its close relatives are obvious entrants for the wildlife marathon. One domestic descendant of Przewalski's is known to have covered 20 miles in an hour. Zebras could probably do about the same, and flat out could sprint to 30 miles an hour. But it was in the dusty Somalian desert that the world record was set up. A wild ass, ancestor of the domestic donkey incidentally, is known to have sustained 16 miles at the impressive rate of 30 miles an hour. A human marathon hopeful is still a pretty respectable performer, doing an average of 12 miles an hour over 26 miles. Besides man, only the horse can be considered a true Olympic entrant. An endurance test is one part of the equestrian Olympic 3-day event. It's designed to test both the horse's and the rider's fitness and ability to complete an obstacle course. The 16-mile course has been run in about an hour and 50 minutes. Jumping skill and achievement reach a peak in the Grand Prix. A wild impala needs to be able to jump as it runs if it's not to become a meal at the first obstacle. And it helps a kangaroo to clear a 5-foot fence. Feats like these are best compared with the Olympic steeplechase, which does call for the double skill of clearing obstacles and running at high speed. Steeplechasing no doubt had its origin in early man's need to move swiftly and to clear hazards as he went. He must have had to sprint at high speed towards his dinner. He may also have had to escape at high speed from a wounded animal that had turned on him. Man's remarkable jogging ability probably had its evolutionary origin in a prehistoric need to jog for hours or even days after a wounded animal. In early tribal conflict, and later in larger-scale wars between nations, the physical fitness of Greek and other soldiery was important, and competitive games were organized as part of their training. Even now, political competition between nations is an apparently inevitable aspect of the Olympic Games. Olympic competitors in both the long and the high jump run, jump, and stop dead. These kinds of jumps find no legitimate comparisons in nature. In Norway, however, they have a standing long jump which compares rather nicely with what frogs do. The graceful jumping of the frog is the only animal skill that's inspired an actual animal Olympics. Needless to say, in California.
It's Scotty there. One, good jumper. Two, three, a good jump from Big Ben from England there. Three. One, two, three, fantastic. Three, a good jump from Big Ben from England there.
Like frogs, grasshoppers have elongated legs for liftoff. A top hop is almost 60 inches, 5 feet. Jumping like this consumes much energy, but is said to be an effective method of escape from predators because its direction is unpredictable. High-jumping fleas disappear in a millisecond. But in this very slowed-down laboratory film, this takeoff for an 8-inch jump lifts the animal 133 times its own height. That's like a person jumping to the height of a 700-foot tall building. The flea does it with a kind of catapult mechanism called a catch muscle, which stretches the tendon and releases it like a spring. Down he comes. Apparently insects do land randomly like this. He looks dead, but he isn't. Unlike primitive man's all-out fisticuffs, sport boxing involves padded gloves and no hitting below the belt. It's ritualized aggression, though serious injury and very occasional deaths are not unknown. Most individual fighting in the animal world has evolved with similar conventions. This is a tournament of roughs, male birds competing for feminine favors. Physical assault in nature is usually in the interest of a mate, a territory, or dominance within a group. Intentional killing is rare. Mad March hares are not so much mad as sensibly anxious about securing a mate. If this aggression were not so ritualized, and if the intent were to kill the rival, both of these heavyweight elephant seals would run a much greater risk of serious injury. For this reason, no doubt, the dominant males don't start fights with rivals. They wait to be challenged. Gazelles seldom, if ever, actually spear one another. Red deer stags fight pretty hard, but less dangerously than they might. Otherwise, natural selection would have produced killer stags with sword-like horns. The shape of their actual antlers reflects the policy of fighting reasonably safely. Not that accidents don't happen. 1 in 20 stags will get seriously injured in a fight during its lifetime. The harem holder here is repelling the challenge of a young bachelor. If he was seeing off a pack of wolves, he would use his horns in earnest, and the range of points would help keep more than one attacker at bay. Whether it's antlers or horns, teeth, or the poison fangs of a couple of rattlesnakes, they're not used treacherously, nor without warning on its own species. The attacked individual is given a chance to defend itself, and although the fights may be searching tests of strength, determination, and skill, their purpose is not to kill. These various skills are learned at an early age. Play is not really play, but a vital rehearsal for adult life in which the tactics of competition are acted out, be it among red fox cubs in a rocky field or baboon babies on an African mountain. Many Olympic events employ accessories. Today's javelin was yesterday's war spear, but there was a limit to the distance a missile could be thrown, and so the gun was developed. Olympic trap shooters fire at saucer-shaped clay pigeons. What could possibly be found to compare with this? Amazingly, in the quiet coastal waters of the Orient, there lives a natural marksman, a wild sharpshooter, and it's called the riflefish or archerfish. Using large and mobile eyes, the fish first spots its victim, an insect, say, but one above the surface. Fire. A powerful pellet of water shoots out. And again. The accuracy is amazing when you realize that the animal aims from underwater and has to allow for the refraction of light at the surface, which makes the prey appear to be where it isn't. Almost directly below its target, the fish positions itself. Refraction is less the more directly upwards you look. Its range is up to 4 feet. It's direct hit after direct hit. The firing mechanism involves enormous jaw muscles and a tiny tube formed by the tongue and the palate. A really powerful jet can travel 15 feet. That was nature's riflefish, one of the most sophisticated of all the animal Olympians. World champion swimmers do 100 meters in 50 seconds. That's 4.5 miles an hour. The animal counterparts would be among the other air-breathing creatures plowing moving along the surface like the sea lion, which may be able to go 4 times as fast as the record-holding human. 20 miles an hour can be achieved by penguins when they're pursued. The reason why porpoises porpoise, or penguins porpoise for that matter, is that it saves energy. It means these can reach at least 20 miles an hour. But what about this chap? It's difficult not to believe that he's doing it for fun. It's the kind of behavior that finds no comparison in the human Olympic Games. Animals have physical skills with which, unaided, we can't hope to compete. Man may be the outstanding all-rounder, but the animals are the real specialists. What special events would they choose if they organized their own competitions? Breath-held diving, perhaps. This is a harp seal, beautifully adapted in its metabolism and its breathing to withstand the severe stresses of diving. The seal can decrease its heart rate to just a few beats per minute and shut down the flow of blood in its body during a prolonged dive. The vital supply of oxygen is then reserved only for use by the heart and the brain. Unlike other marine animals, the seal uses its hind flippers for propulsion. The small front flippers are used mainly for steering or helping to climb up onto the ice. One year, perhaps breath-held diving will become an Olympic event. At present, the non-Olympic record is 3 minutes and 40 seconds held by a Frenchman who, with the aid of weights, descended 100 meters or 328 feet before returning with the assistance of a balloon. Among birds, the record holder is an Antarctic emperor penguin known to have stayed under for at least 15 minutes and to have dived to 265 meters, over 800 feet. Among the smaller marine animals, the Weddell seal, also from the Antarctic, is known to hold its breath for 40 minutes and to descend to 1,000 feet or 300 meters. The mighty sperm whale stays under for 80 minutes and dives over 7,000 feet, more than a mile, to 2,250 meters. Another whale, the Pacific gray whale, is a contender for the next Animal Olympics event, a surface marathon swim. After a summer season in the rich Bering Sea off the coast of Alaska, the great leviathans head south on their annual migration following the Pacific coast of North America. It will take 3 months for them to swim nearly 5,000 miles to calving grounds in Mexico. Whales are the largest warm-blooded seagoing animals. Penguins are the smallest. One species, having nested here on the Patagonian coast of South America, sets off each autumn to spend the winter near Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. It's nearly 2,000 miles, easily the greatest swimming event in the whole world of birds. Man's longest ocean swim is 129 miles. Ostriches in a desert mirage, appearing to walk on water. This Olympic feat is an illusion, but there are animals which have made the adaptation to walking on water. Pond skaters are pretty lightweight to begin with, but they spread what load they've got over 6 legs. These insects get about on water to hunt, and they detect the presence of prey not by looking, but by feeling for ripples through special sensors in their feet. More extraordinary because of the sheer physical effort involved is the dramatic climax to the courtship display of the swan grebe of western North America. This creature is officially named the Jesus Christ lizard because it can support itself on water. Using the same action of its long hind legs as on land, it can, and regularly does, run across the surface of the water to escape from danger. This high-speed running on specially adapted feet equips the lizard to move faster than most predators can swim. At the peak of its form, the Jesus Christ lizard can run 10 yards, but it takes a lot of effort. This one, with no firm bank to take off from, is lifting itself onto the water surface. Imagine the exertion. That's the Jesus Christ lizard of Central America, water walker extraordinary. Few of the world's 20,000 kinds of fish have ever been timed, but the winner of an underwater swimming event would likely be an aquatic predator pursuing smaller but very speedy fish. The salmon, to reach its spawning grounds, may have to negotiate a waterfall. Claims for leaps are often exaggerated. The truth is impressive enough. The record is 11 feet 4 inches. The salmon's water speed prior to emergence is 20 miles an hour. One marine fish found leaping so much to its advantage, it turned one pair of fins into wings. The flying fish glides 500 feet on shining webs. And so to locomotion through air. Among the animal aeronautic events, we would expect to find speed flying, soaring, hovering, and gliding. The gliding animal here is a Borneo squirrel. Gliding is one of the simplest kinds of movement through air. The force is gravity. The idea is to save the effort and risk involved in climbing down one tree and then walking to and clambering up another tree. The glide can be over 200 feet. Insects must have been the first animals actually to conquer gravity, to lift themselves up by their own effort, towards the sky. True flight is an achievement shared by the insects with only two other groups. First, birds who alone use feathers, and then mammals, bats that spread a skinny membrane between their four limbs. This means that most of them can no longer walk, and so they hang. But whether these wild wings are of skin or feathers or of insect scales, they all provide lift against the pull of the earth and forward motion against the resistance of the air. The best that man has achieved using his own body power is a flight across the English Channel. But it had to be in a highly sophisticated machine. The machine was called, incidentally, the Gossamer Albatross. Measuring the feats of the animal Olympians is not easy. Even a trained falcon won't fly a set course. So one method was to attach a small spring-loaded propeller to the bird and afterwards measure how far off the thread it had run. The device produced a figure of 60 miles an hour in level flight, far less than the widely accepted but exaggerated claims that had been made. This prince of falcons, the peregrine, is a fine and a fast flyer, but the very best that we can claim for it is 82 miles an hour in a stoop. Homing pigeons can give reliable figures provided full and honest account is taken of the weather, particularly the wind, at the time of the race. Pigeon people say that the top speed, hand on their hearts, they could claim for their beloved birds is 50 miles an hour. 45 is more usual. Man, however, with a lot of help from technology, can fly at over 2,000 miles an hour in a plane. And he can also stay still in air using another very complicated machine. Contrary to what we've all believed for years, the kestrel can't truly hover in still air. Apparently it needs a headwind to hold stationary. The pied kingfisher, however, can genuinely hover in totally still air. Slow motion gives a close-up in time of eyes held still in space, the better to detect movement below. Record holders in aerobatics are the hummingbirds, but 80 flaps a second involves a lot of energy. Again, slow motion to reveal how perfect its control is. By beating its wings in a figure-8 pattern, delicately adjusting the angle of wing beats and modifying air currents with a rudder-like tail, it not only hovers but also moves slightly up, down, forwards, or backwards. A hummingbird expends more energy than any other warm-blooded animal given its size. It must consume twice its own weight in food during the day, and it must go torpid or hibernate through the night to keep from starving. In nature's air show, slope soaring is a specialized skill. This albatross is slope soaring, riding on air deflected upwards with the cliff. The long, slender wing of the albatross is well suited for soaring at fairly high speeds. Soaring depends on forces set up between the wings and the movement of the surrounding air, which make it possible for the bird to remain airborne for long periods of time without having to flap its wings. Their bodies are streamlined for this sustained, sailing flight, and they use their feet and tail to help them maneuver easily in wind and air currents. With the aid of hang gliders, man can not only glide but also slope soar. Another kind of soaring event is riding on thermals, on rising spirals of warm air. Strong wildlife contenders for the medals here will be the vultures. They regularly rise to 6,000 feet. Other birds like storks and eagles go in for cross-country soaring. They migrate by using a succession of thermals. The vulture's wings are adapted for very efficient gliding. They have a large surface area and distinctive stubby wingtips with the feathers spread out at the ends. A butterfly on the final stage of a flight marathon. The monarch butterfly has been known to cross the Atlantic to Europe unaided, except by a tailwind of, say, 30 miles an hour. Exceptionally favorable autumn westerlies usually bring a few across. Some only just fail. Many more must die in mid-Atlantic. Feeding up after 3 whole days flying at about 11 miles an hour, to which, of course, has to be added the tailwind. Greenland is summer home to the Greenland wheat ear, that each autumn puts on fat as fuel, grows new feathers, and then waits for favorable winds and weather. It then flies 2,000 miles to Portugal in about 48 hours. On takeoff, the wheat ear is heavy with fuel, just like a long-haul aircraft. But as plane and bird burn up their propellants, the loads lighten and flying gets easier. The wheat ear gets a gold for the longest overseas migration by any small land bird. The Arctic tern does feed as it migrates, but its marathon is still almost beyond belief. The bird, born in northern Canada, flies first the length of the Atlantic Ocean. It then rounds the Cape of Good Hope, soon to start the most hazardous leg of the journey. This is the crossing of the Southern Ocean, 2,000 miles of stormy sea. Then Antarctica, the Great White South. Helped by the prevailing westerlies, the young bird then circumnavigates the continent, literally flying around the world, although in a helpful latitude and with a following wind. Now back north, and to complete in 23 months a stupendous journey of 14,000 miles to navigate home to its precise birthplace. Only the round-the-world endurance of a single-handed yachtsman begins to compare with this achievement. One startlingly quick marathon of 800 miles by an incredibly young bird concerns an Oxford swift. In the tower of the University Museum in Oxford, England, the birds have been provided with nest boxes, and they have been the subject of much scientific scrutiny. Every year, adults and young ones have been ringed with numbered identity bracelets. Silhouetted in the nest box entrance, a young bird just before departure. On its very first flight, our bird was to reach Madrid in Spain in less than 3 days. That's more than 217 miles a day, a prodigious feat even for as aerial a bird as the swift. It's on the wing that swifts feed, drink, mate, and even sleep in their own way. They don't feed until they're 3 years old and have no reason to alight during that time. They're believed to remain in flight continuously for those 3 years, clocking up nearly 1 million miles. It's a flight marathon to end all flight marathons. Our last purely animal event is treetop acrobatics, as performed, for example, by the colobus monkey. They know their way around the tree canopy as we know our way to the office, but their performance is no less wonderful for that. But to return to our original theme, the darlings of the Olympic audiences are the elfin lady gymnasts. Nadia Comaneci was the first in Olympic history to gain a perfect score. What animal could possibly offer natural gymnastic perfection? A wild gibbon, perhaps? Scientists try to remove the mystery from natural phenomena, even from natural perfection, but not to take away our sense of beauty and wonder. There are those who find it impossible to believe that a performance like this can be the result of natural selection. But Charles Darwin would have called this a difficulty of our imagination. So long has the process taken. Not a difficulty of our reason. The matchless feats of the animal Olympians are miracles performed by evolution.